everyone is advocating for the flourishing of society, but everyone has a different ideal. You start saying, no, let's start with the kingdom of God. Let's begin there. So what do you mean when you say that the kingdom of God is not from this world, which I think many of us get, but is definitely for this world?
Well, I mean, this is a way of refuting the normal but wrong interpretation of what Jesus says to Pontius Pilate when Pontius Pilate says to him, "So are you a king?" And Jesus says, well, various things, but he ends up then saying, "My kingdom is not from this world." And that was translated in the King James Version as, "My kingdom is not of this world." And so generations were taught that Jesus' kingdom is a spiritual kingdom which exists up in heaven and which then basically leaves this world out of consideration. And this world is just a dirty place, and you get more dirty by messing with it. So the sooner you can get out of here and get your soul in tune with God and then ultimately go into heaven, the better. And so this was a way of saying no to that view and saying instead what Jesus meant, certainly according to John's Greek there, is my kingdom is not from this world. In other words, my kingdom does not grow within this world, but everything we know about Jesus and the kingdom from all four Gospels is that the kingdom of God was supposed to be coming on earth as in heaven. In other words, it is for this world. One of the things that astonishes me is the number of Christians who pray that prayer day by day because they were taught by their mother or whatever, the Lord's Prayer, but don't realize what it is they're praying for, that God's kingdom would come on earth in this present reality. And then if you say, well, look out of the window, it obviously hasn't happened yet, the answer is, you're looking for the wrong thing. And Jesus' redefinition of kingdom in Mark chapter 10 is absolutely vital here. I think I get to it in one of the chapters here in this book, where James and John want to sit at Jesus' right and his left in his coming kingdom. And Jesus says, you have no idea what you're talking about. And then says, are you able to suffer the same way I'm going to? And then he says, listen, the kings of this earth get their way by bullying and bossing people. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it the other way around. The one who wants to be great must be your servant, must be the slave of all, because the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. And it's fascinating because over against what both liberal teachers and conservative teachers have done, you get the atonement theology of Mark 10:45, giving his life as a ransom for many, inside the redrawing of political theology, which is this is how the rulers of this age do it, by being demagogues or tyrants or whatever. And we're going to run the world a different way by being servants, by going and giving of ourselves to people. And that's what the Sermon on the Mount's all about. Blessed are the poor in spirit and the meek and the humble and the brokenhearted and the mourners and the hungry for justice people and the peacemakers. And they're the ones through whom God's kingdom has been coming and his will has been being done on earth as in heaven for the last 2,000 years. And so the question then is, how do we as Christians facilitate a society which has those sorts of priorities about putting the poor first, the weak first, peacemaking first, justice first, etc., rather than what the demagogues and the tyrants have done all along? So that's the very short version.
It's interesting you mentioned that, talking about the Sermon on the Mount. I remember reading in that book that I just alluded to about Andrew Lynn and Saving the Protestant Ethic, and he actually refers to C.I. Scofield, of course, the premillennial dispensationalist, who actually said that the Sermon on the Mount was not for today, not at all, and just totally removes that from us. But we see that we are to advocate for that kingdom.
And that's a real problem with the whole dispensationalist movement. That dream has been postponed until either the Lord comes or the rapture or whichever system you happen to follow. And that it seems to me is such a flagrant denial of the whole message of the New Testament that it's extraordinary that people who hold that sort of view could ever hold their heads up and say they're Bible-believing Christians, because it's so absolutely antithetical. But anyway, you know that world as much as I do.
Well, I probably know it a little bit better. I went to a premillennial dispensationalist school as an undergraduate.
I'm so sorry. I hope you managed to take the right antidote. You had a good doctor who gave you a medicine to take. To get rid of it.
I did. It took me a long time to learn to see the difference, and then praying that with the Lord's Prayer, seeing that actually really changed my mind, is seeing the scriptures, seeing it brought out. But there's still a lot of confusion because it is the predominant theological system that is existence within America, and I find that there is so much confusion even now. but there is
And
a there's a pendulum shift right now.
yeah.
Go ahead. You were going to say
Well,
something.
I was going to say the problem with that is that it leaves a vacuum, and into that vacuum can come all sorts of other ideas, and the people who embrace that dispensationalist view have no real basis to critique the things which come into the vacuum because they've absented themselves. They're
Mhm.
not playing on the field anymore, and so then you get somebody like your former president and possibly about to be an ex-president, who knows, and a lot of those people are voting for him for reasons which I find disturbing and distressing in the extreme, on the grounds that somehow they think he's going to preserve or protect some way of being an American Christian, whether it's on the abortion issue or whatever. And that is such a naive way to do political thought. Well, it's not even doing political thought. It's a way of abrogating political thought and saying we're going to go with a knee-jerk reaction instead, and then we're in very, very dangerous territory. And I mean, I don't agree with the idea that America should be the world's policeman, but nevertheless, over the last 150 years, if America decides we're going to go and do something like helping Europe in the First World War and the Second World War, then sooner or later that weight is going to tell. Obviously, that didn't always work. Think of Vietnam, think of Afghanistan, etc. However, a sense that we need America to be on side with liberal, democratic, freedom-loving societies around the world. And if it's not going to play and hold up its end, then we're all in trouble.